All right, let's dive into a massive debate that's been heating up in the real estate world. It all boils down to this one simple phrase: your listing, your lead. So, what's the deal? Is this about agent responsibility, or is it a sign of a broken system that's being taken advantage of? Let's get into it. Okay, let's start with something I bet a lot of you have been through. You find that perfect home online, you're excited, you hit that contact agent button, and then nothing. Absolute radio silence. Your calls, your emails, they just disappear. And that dream home, suddenly it feels like it's a million miles away. Sound familiar? So yeah, that feeling of frustration, it's pretty much universal. And that exact feeling is the launchpad for this whole debate. It's also what pushed some of the big online portals to come up with their own, let's call it a very controversial solution. So here's the argument you'll hear from some of these big platforms. They say, look, because some listing agents just drop the ball and don't respond, we're totally justified in taking your inquiry and selling it. Yeah, selling it as a lead to another agent, one who's paying for that spot. Now, on the surface, maybe that sounds like a quick fix, but it opens up a whole can of worms. And that brings us right to the heart of it: your listing, your lead. This is a phrase that Homes.com really popularized, and the idea behind it is super simple. When you ask a question about a specific house, shouldn't your question go to the person who knows the most about it? The listing agent. Now, here's what's really interesting about how the source material breaks this down. It argues this isn't about an agent just feeling entitled to get that lead. No. It's about accepting the responsibility that comes with taking a listing. I mean, when you agree to sell a property, you're also agreeing to be available, to be accessible to anyone interested. It's part of the job. Which leads us to the real gut check question here. Is the problem with the structure of the whole system, or is it a problem with service? So let's just ask it straight up. When an agent doesn't call you back, is that because the entire real estate system is just fundamentally broken, or is it simply a case of one professional not doing their job? Trust me, telling these two apart is absolutely crucial to understanding what's really going on. Think about it like this. On one hand, you have a structural failure. That means the system itself, the very blueprint, is flawed and needs to be ripped up and replaced. But on the other hand, you have a service failure. The system is actually fine, but the people inside it aren't living up to their end of the bargain. When you start confusing the two, you let a simple performance problem become an excuse to tear down the whole structure. To really nail this down, the source we're looking at uses a fantastic analogy. Just picture yourself in a restaurant. So you're there, you're seated, you know what you want to order, but you can't get your waiter's attention. They're just gone. It's exactly like waiting for that agent to call back, right? It's super frustrating, and it's not at all what you expected. Okay, so in that situation, what's the logical solution? What's the common sense way to fix the problem of the bad waiter? Well, you would never tell the customer, hey, sorry, our waiter's MIA, so we sold your table to a waiter from the restaurant across the street. I mean, that's just absurd, right? The real solution, the one that actually makes sense, is to fix the service issue inside your own restaurant. That way, the customer gets what they came for, and the business doesn't lose out. And that really hits on the core idea here. The right way to handle performance failure is with accountability, not by just redistributing the work. You don't take the responsibility, and the customer for that matter, and just hand it off to someone else who's willing to pay for it. So that brings us to the business model that's been built around this whole thing. If it's not really about fixing the service, then what's it actually about? Okay, let's break down how this model actually works. It all starts with a real problem. Step 1, an agent fails to respond. Then, step 2, that service failure gets repackaged and sold as a consumer protection issue. See what they did there? Step 3, this becomes the perfect excuse to sell your inquiry as a hot new lead to another agent who's paying them. And boom, step 4, the platform has successfully made money off of the original agent's failure to do their job. And just like that, the entire narrative shifted. It suddenly became, you can't trust these listing agents, they're unreliable. So we, the tech platform, will step in and decide who gets to talk to the buyer. And in doing that, they basically took control away from the brokers and gave it to tech companies whose number one goal is selling access to, well, to you. But here's the big question. Does rerouting your inquiry actually help the very consumer it claims it's trying to protect? The source material argues pretty strongly that it often just creates a brand new set of problems. Just think about the hidden costs for buyers. Instead of getting a fast answer, you might actually get a slower response.
You could end up talking to an agent who's never even set foot in the house. And in a really competitive market, that delay could be the difference between getting the property and losing it. It just creates confusion, and honestly, it wears down your trust in the whole process.
And maybe the biggest problem of all is the lack of transparency. Let's be real. Most people who click that contact button have every reason to believe they're getting in touch with the listing agent. They have absolutely no clue their personal info is being bundled up and sold off. That huge gap between what you expect and what's actually happening, that's a major, major issue.
Okay, so if selling the inquiry isn't the real solution, then what is? Let's talk about some fixes that actually get to the root of the problem: professional standards.
There's a fantastic line in the source material about this. It says, blaming the "your listing, your lead" principle for this mess is like blaming the steering wheel when a driver just isn't paying attention. The tool itself isn't the problem. It's the lack of accountability for the person behind the wheel. And these are the kinds of real solutions being proposed. They're not flashy, but they're the ones that would actually work. Things like enforcing minimum service standards, mandating required response times for any inquiry, making brokers more accountable for the agents who work for them. These are all things that focus on improving people's behavior, not just building some complicated workaround. And really, that's the ultimate takeaway here. The idea of sending an inquiry directly to the listing agent, that's not what's broken. What's broken, according to this argument, are the professional standards that should have made sure you got a response in the first place. So we'll end right where the source does, with a really clear call to action. Instead of inventing this complex system just to make money off a problem, the path forward is actually simple, though maybe not easy. Fix the service, enforce the standards, and for goodness sake, don't sell the table.